Hello everyone on Instagram. All right, and there we are on Facebook. Okay, hello everyone. Happy Monday, wherever you are in Canada. Okay, so today's Fusion Flexibility Mobility will be a yoga class, and we're going to work our way into pigeon pose or whatever variation of pigeon pose you want to get to by the end of the class. So to start, I'll just read off our disclosure. So my name is Jessica Davis, and I'm a fitness and sports instructor here in Gagetown, New Brunswick. So in response to COVID-19, PSP is offering telefitness to Canadian Armed Force members. By using social media platforms, the telefitness classes tailored to the Canadian Armed Force members become accessible to all. Prior to participating in the session and to make an informed Prior to participating in the session and to make an informed decision on whether you should seek advice from a qualified exercise professional or healthcare provider, please consult the Get Active questionnaire of the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology and its reference document simply by clicking on the links below. So our fitness coordinator, Amanda, will be posting that link in the comments. If it doesn't show up there for you, then you can scroll back to any of our live classes or videos, and the document link will be in there. So just check that out before you start. By continuing with this telefitness class, you understand that there's a possibility of physical injury, and you agree that you do so voluntarily at your own risk. You also assume all risk of injury and agree to release the Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services from any and all claims related to your participation in this telefitness class. Okay. So we will get started now. So all you will need for the class is a yoga mat or a soft surface that you can lie on as well. If you have yoga blocks, either cork or foam, then you can use those. If you don't have blocks, then just grab a couple thick textbooks or even pillows, folded up blankets, anything like that can just help you get some rise off the ground. Later in the class, we'll be using those. If your range of motion through your hips is not the greatest, if it can be improved, then you also might want to grab some sort of strap that you can hook around the bottom of your foot to stretch that way. So either a strap or a t-shirt or a towel, anything like that just gives you some extra length in order to get towards your toes. So with that, we will get started. We're just going to start lying down. So you can lie on your mat. Start with some deep breathing. So lying however is comfortable for you. You can have one hand on your belly, one on your chest to feel your breathing pattern. You can let your arms extend out to each side. Legs can be straight, or you can bend them at the knee with your feet flat on the mat, however is comfortable for you. And just start with some nice deep breaths. Feeling each inhale enter in through your nose or mouth, carrying it down into the throat to expand your lungs, and then expand through your belly and your diaphragm. Feeling the opposite occur as you exhale, first letting your belly and your diaphragm fall, and then your chest and lungs empty of air. And then feeling the breath exit out through your mouth and nose. While you're just lying here in stillness, just take note of how your hips are feeling, whether they feel a bit tight on the front side or the back side. Maybe if you place your hands on your hips, you may feel that one of your hands is sitting higher than the other. You may have some tightness holding up one side of your pelvis. And just take note of that. Slowly start to tip your head back and forth so you can keep your eyes closed and just slowly kind of look to your left, bring your head back to center, look to your right, and just continue that back and forth. The next time your head comes back to center, you can just stay there. Wherever your hands are, you can move them down so the palms face down beside your hips. Use those hands pressing into the ground to support you. Start to turn on your core. Support with your core and lift both feet off the mat and press the heels up into the ceiling. You can keep as much bend in your knees as you would like. And just kind of roll your ankles, wiggle your toes for a couple breaths. Take a nice big inhale. As you exhale, draw the right knee in towards your chest. The left leg can stay elevated, or you can bring the sole of the left foot down to the mat. Start to just make some little circles in that right hip joint. Starting to make them a bit bigger and just really get that right hip joint moving. Opening the leg up to the side and drawing it back around to the center. Switch directions with the circles of that right hip. And then slowly come back to stillness and set the right foot down to meet the left, or bring both feet back to the mat if the left leg was still extended. Bring your palms back to each side of your hip facing down. Support with your arms, engage with your core, and float both feet back up to the ceiling. So soles of the feet are pressing into the ceiling. Take a nice big inhale. As you exhale, draw the left knee in towards the chest and hug it in. Right foot can stay up and extended, or you can bring the sole of the right foot flat on the mat. And then just start those same small circles in the left hip joint. Start to make them a little bit larger. And switch directions on that left side. Good, and set the left foot down to meet the right, And just let that sink in for a second. See how your hips are feeling. Extend your arms up overhead and just give yourself a bit of a stretch. And return your arms back to each side, and then just start to kind of windshield wiper your knees back and forth to each side. Keep going with that. Awesome. And then bring both knees back up to stillness. Now take your right ankle and cross it over top of your left knee. So you're creating kind of a Thor shape with your legs if you extend the left foot up. So I'm just going to turn this way so you can see better. So right ankle is over the left leg, and then I'm going to extend my left foot up in the air. That knee can still be bent as much as you need to. You can also use a wall to help you do this if your mobility in those hips isn't as great. So from here, take your arms and lace the right hand between your two thighs, and the left hand comes around the outside of the left leg. And then you're just going to kind of hug in that left thigh with your hands laced behind the thigh, and you can use your right elbow to be pushing out on this knee to open up the hip a little bit more there. Take a couple breaths. If you're not able to grab onto your leg, you can put that towel, t-shirt, or strap through and hang onto it instead of your leg, or you can come to the wall as I am now. You can put your foot up the wall and kind of push off the wall with the left foot to create the stretch. And the closer you move your body towards the wall, the more stretch you'll feel up the back and the side of the right leg. So just wherever you need to be to feel that stretch, just a little bit, it's not a painful stretch. And then slowly unlace and let that go. Just bring the soles of your feet back to the mat. Just for a couple breaths before we move to the other side. This time bring the left ankle across the right knee, and then lift the right foot up in the air. You can lace your left hand through your thighs, and the right hand wraps around the outside to draw that leg in, and the left elbow is pushing out on the left knee to try and open that up. Again, you can use your strap or a t-shirt or towel to hang on to instead of your thigh, or you can again use the wall to help you create that stretch up the back and side of the left leg. Just a few more breaths wherever you are. Slowly let that go. And then just come to lie on your mat again for a few breaths of stillness before we get moving. Check back in with your breath that you're continuing with those nice, deep, even breaths. And when you're ready, on your own time, you can roll over onto one side. Maybe create a kind of a pillow with your arm underneath you. Just take a breath or two before you sit right up. And then when you're ready, you can bring yourself up to seated, and we're actually going to come right around into tabletop. So on your hands and knees in tabletop position, we're going to untuck the toes and let the tops of the feet sit on the mat. So making sure that our hands are directly under our shoulders, knees are under the hips. Using nice, strong, active hands so the fingertips are pressing in. And we're just going to do a quick cat and cow with whatever variation you'd like. So inhale, lift your head and your gaze up, drop your belly and lift your tailbone up to the ceiling. And then as you exhale, round up through your back, tuck the tailbone under and tuck your chin to your chest. Inhale back up. If you want to add any lateral movement to this, feel free. So in cat and cow, you can shift your weight back and forth between each side, and you can kind of create like a barrel roll or a jump rope in your cat and cow, or you can just stay with the usual variations. Whatever you would like. For a few more rounds of breath. One more. So inhale up and exhale. And then just come back to a neutral position. So in our neutral cat and cow, so nice flat back in that tabletop. Bring your knees into the center to touch and your feet to touch as well. So now your knees are on the center line, your hands are still directly under your shoulders. Lift the right foot and knee off the mat to bring it back and straight so your toes are touching on the ground behind you. Inhale to lift the foot just up to hip height and then bring it back down to the mat. So inhale the foot just to hip height, so you're not going very far at all. You don't want to create an arch or a back bend in your back. You're just bringing the heel up to hip height and setting the toe back down to the mat. So inhale, rise the foot. Exhale, let it fall back to the mat under control. Inhale, rise. Exhale, down. Inhale, rise. Exhale, down. Good. Bring that right knee back in to join the left. And then let's bring the left leg straight. Toes are touching. Same thing on this left side. So inhale, heel just comes to hip height, and then touch the toes back down. Inhale, up. Exhale, controlled back down. Inhale, up. Exhale, control. Inhale, up. Exhale, control. Good. Bring the left knee back in to join the right. Widen your knees out this time so your knees come out to the edges of your mat. Push back on your hands, let your hips sink back over your feet, and just come into a child's pose for a couple breaths. So forehead comes down to the mat, or you can use a block to elevate your forehead if you need to. On your next inhale, rise back up into tabletop. We're going to continue kind of with those lifts, but we're going to add some lateral movement now in the hip. So this time we're going to keep the knee bent. So we're starting with the right leg again. We're going to keep the knee bent. So we're bringing the knee up to hip height, and then the foot is at a 90-degree angle up from there. And then bring that knee back down to meet the left. And then we're going to open it up to the other side just to hip height. So from the front, it's going to look like this. Right knee is inhaling up. So you can see my foot come up behind me. It's It's at that 90-degree bend, bringing it back down beside the left where it started, and then open up the right knee to the side just to hip height, and then bring it back down. So with that right foot, we're kicking it up and back. My knee is only coming to hip height, bring it back down where it was, and then open it up to the side, knee just to hip height as well. So we're going to go for 3 on each side with that. Nice and slow and controlled. So right side first, kick the foot back, knee comes to hip height, bring it back down to center, and then open it up and out to the right side, back to center. Inhale, kick up and back. Exhale, drop it back to center. Inhale, out to the side. Exhale, back to center. Feel your glute on the left side really kicking in here to help support you. Kick back, down to center. Open to the side, to center. One more. Inhale, up and back. Exhale, down. Inhale, open to the side. Exhale, down. Straight into the left side. Left foot, kick up and back. Knee to hip height. Draw back to the center. Exhale. Inhale, open up to the side. Exhale, back down. Feel your core supporting you. Feel your glutes supporting you. Kick up and back. And then open to the side. Back down. One more, up and back. And then down and open to the side. And back down. Good. This time, just sit back on your feet with your heels and give your wrists a little bit of a rollout, because we've spent a fair bit of time on them. Just flick them out, roll them around. Good. Okay, we're going to start to rise it up a little bit. So we're going to come into high plank next. Alright, so from kneeling, seated here, bring your hands back down in front of you, tuck your toes under, and bring yourself into a high plank. Hands are nice and active, fingertips pressing into the mat. Same thing we did in our tabletop. Rise the right foot up. Bring the knee in towards the chest this time. So my back kind of rounds up here as my knee comes in, and then kick it back out and down. Same thing with the left side. Rise the left foot. Bring the knee in towards the chest. Round up through your back and kick that foot back. Open up your knees nice and wide. Push back through your hands. Sink your hips back for a child's pose. We're going to keep moving here nice and strong. So rise back up into high plank. Same thing again. Right foot comes off the mat. Round the right knee into the chest. Kick it back. Keep that foot off the mat. Do it again. Round into the chest. Kick it back. One more time. Round in. And kick it back. Right into the left side. Round in. Kick it back. Round in. One more. Round in. Kick it back and open the knees up. Sink back for a child's pose. Rise back up when you're ready. Now this time, we're going to bring our knee into the chest again, but we're going to set it down and start to kind of feel our way towards that pigeon pose, but we're not going to go into it just yet. So from high plank, lift the right foot, bring the right knee towards the chest, but then set the right shin down on the mat. Keep the back left foot nice and active. My toes are still tucked under and supporting. Lift up with your hands, bring that right knee to the chest again, kick it back. Same thing on the left foot. Rise off the left, draw it into the chest, and set the left shin down. Right foot is still active and supporting. Pick the left knee up, stretch it back, come down onto your knees in that tabletop position, and we're going to move through a lowered flow. So bring your weight out over your hands so that your hips are coming towards the ground. Start to lower down through your elbows until your belly reaches the mat. Just barely inhale so that your chest rises off the mat just a little, but your hands are still supporting. Now push down through your hands, lift your hips up and back into your child's pose once again. And just take a couple resting breaths in child's pose before we move on. Take 3 more deep breaths. And when you're ready, come on back up to tabletop and then move your way through to high plank. So high plank, this time let's lift the right foot off the mat, draw the right knee up and through, and step the right foot through until you're in this low runner's lunge. We're going to set the back left knee down and just rise up for a second into a low lunge. Your arms can be up in the air or can be supporting on your front knee. And just lean forward slightly to start to create that stretch through the left hip flexor. Bring your hands to the inside of your right foot and just walk your right foot over to the right side of your mat a little bit. So from the front, my hands are inside of my right knee, my right foot, and the right foot is just out to the right side. My left knee is pretty well right in between my 2 hands where they're set on the ground. And just breathe here. Try not to have too much of a rounded back or an arched back. Just kind of stay fairly neutral. If you're not able to touch the mat below you, then you can use those books or your blanket and pillow, whatever you had, to create some height for yourself. Height wherever you need it to create that support. And then maybe if you are using your book up the tall way to support you, you can start to lower it down eventually to each different height and get your hands a little bit closer to the ground. Move your right hand back to the outside of your right foot. So start to walk your right foot back into the center. Tuck your toes of the left foot and lift back up onto those back left toes. And kick your right foot back into your high plank. Drop the knees to the mat. And then again for that low flow, lower down through your elbows. Create just a little bit of a lift through your chest. Maybe this time your forearms come down in a Sphinx pose to support you in a slight back bend. Bring your belly and your chest back to the mat. Bring your hands under your shoulders and press up and back into your child's pose once again. Same thing for the left side, so rise up into tabletop and then to high plank. Left toes come off the mat, round them up and through, and step the left foot down. From here in your runner's lunge, drop the back knee for a low lunge. Rise your hands up off the mat. Start to lean forward just slightly to create that stretch in your right hip flexor, and you can bring your hands back down to the mat inside of your left foot. So start to walk the left foot out to the outside. And if you want to use your blocks to create some height before you get too deep into your stretch, you can do so. And just breathe. Stay nice and calm. These deep breaths while you start to create that stretch. And you can tuck the back right toes. Bring your left hand to the outside of your left foot again, so slowly heel toeing that left foot back into the center. Lift up onto your right toes and step back to your high plank again. Drop the knees, lower down through the elbows. Come into your Sphinx, so your elbows and your lower arms come flat on the mat with your hands, your palms facing down. And just stay here for a few breaths for that small back bend in Sphinx. If you're feeling any pinching in your back at all, then please come out of this pose into your child's pose. So lift back up through your hands and drop the hips back over your feet and take child's pose for a few breaths. Take a couple more breaths there. And then we're going to elevate ourselves a bit more and start to come closer into pigeon. So from child's pose, come on back up to tabletop. Tuck your toes under for high plank, and then actually just push yourself right back into downward dog. So this is our first downward dog, so please just pedal out your feet. Get yourself into a comfortable position between your feet and your hands. And once you've pedaled out your feet enough, you can just come to stillness. Bring both feet into the midline so your big toes touch. And we'll lift your right foot up off the mat into a three-legged dog. Sweeping forward, bring your right foot up, or your right knee up to your chest. And then like we did before, set the shin of the right foot down. I'm still supporting with my back left toes. We're going to start to move our way into pigeon, but first we're going to do it with a little rise. So with our right shin down, take either your block or your books or a blanket or whatever you have and place it underneath your thigh and your glute of the right side. Now you can stack this up as much as you need to, as much or as little as you need to. Here, I'll do it from the other angle. So from here, where I'm bringing my knee up and through, I'm going to tuck this block in behind my right thigh and my right glute, and I'm going to sit up and back on it. So my right foot is still on the ground, my right thigh is being supported by the block, and my left leg is stretched out behind. So again, you can have as much height, as many blankets and pillows as you need to, stacked underneath you, to create that height. So if you don't have the mobility, the flexibility, you can be stacked up as high as you need to, just to feel a bit of a stretch through the right thigh. So this is the beginning of our pigeon pose. If you feel fairly comfortable here and you've done pigeon pose before, then you can move through it a little faster if you would like to. Just take one more breath here. Tuck the toes on the back left foot and rise up. Bring that left knee off the mat and then kick the right foot back to your downward dog. In downward dog, if you would like to take one child's pose for a couple breaths, then you can, or you can move back into the other side of pigeon with me. So raise the left foot up off the mat in three-legged dog. Bring the left knee into the chest. Drop the left shin onto the mat. And then again, you can start to create that stack on the left side as much as you need to, so that the left thigh is supported on the block. You can keep yourself supported with your hands in front of you, or you can start to sit up and back, whatever is comfortable. Take one more breath here. Tuck your back right toe underneath. Rise the right knee off the mat. Start to lift off of your block or your blanket and step back into downward dog again. You can move your blocks and blanket out of the way. And if you want, you can take a child's pose, or you can stay in down dog for a couple breaths. So, depending on how you just found that supported version of pigeon, you can decide how far you're going to move into pigeon going forward. So when you're ready, come on back up into downward dog. The right foot lifts off the mat again. Step the right shin up between your hands. Now, if you felt that with the blocks, with your blankets, whatever, the supported pigeon was enough, then feel free to continue with that. If you want to bring your pigeon right down to sit your right hip and pelvis on the floor, then you can do that. You can either rise your chest off the mat, creating a little bit of a back bend through the left side, or you can start to fold yourself towards the mat in the folded pigeon. Whichever, it's up to you. Now, if even doing one more option, if even doing that elevated pigeon felt like too much for you, then just come back into the low lunge that we started with. And maybe just here is enough of a stretch for you through the hip flexor. You don't have to go any further. So wherever you're at in the pigeon, Just hold for 3 more breaths on this side. And wherever you are, elevate yourself so your hands come to the mat again. Tuck the back left toes underneath to bring your left knee off the mat, and then lift through the core to bring the right foot and thigh off the mat, and step back into your downward dog. One more side to complete. Rise the left toes off the mat, coming forward. Bring the left knee to chest, and then set the shin down in between your hands. You can use the blocks to rise your pigeon, or you can bring it right down to the mat this time. Again, you can sit up and rise the chest, creating a back bend on your right side if you don't have any injuries to worry about, or you can bring yourself down into that folded pigeon, coming forward. And just sink in for a few relaxing breaths. Try to relax your muscles as much as you can, especially in your hips and your legs. Three more breaths. When you're ready, you can walk your hands back to be flat on the mat. Tuck your right toes underneath behind you. Rise the right knee off the mat. Rise the left leg off the mat and kick it back to downward dog. Bring your knees wide to each side and sink back into child's pose. Now in child's pose, walk your left hand all the way over to the left edge of your mat and bring your right hand to come on top of the left hand. Sink your weight back into the right hip and feel a stretch created up from your left hip all the way up from your right hip all the way up your right side. Same thing the other way. Walk your right hand to the right edge of your mat. Bring your left hand over on top of it. This time sink your weight back into your left hip and feel that stretch come up the left side of your body. Move your hands back to center. You can either stay in child's pose if that's really comfortable for you as your final resting posture, or you can flip over onto your back, just as we started. So if you've chosen to stay in child's pose for some stillness, that is fine. If you've come to lay flat on your back, you can either continue in stillness, or if you want a little bit of a massage for your low back, you can hug your knees in slightly and just rock back and forth a little bit, creating that bit of a massage for your low back where we had some back bends. And your feet come back flat on the mat. You can either keep your knees bent like this or fully extend your legs down the mat. Open your arms up to each side. And let's just finish off with some deep breaths in stillness. Come back to those inhales and exhales, how we felt the breath entering in through our lungs and back out. Rising the chest and then the belly. Take 3 more breaths. If you have the time to continue with your stillness and breathing exercises, then please feel free to stay. Otherwise, you can roll yourself onto one side. And then slowly sit yourself back up, like we did at the beginning. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely Monday afternoon and a great week. And I will see you again at the end of the week for some more mobility. Thanks, everyone.